Oh, my friends, welcome back. I hope you guys are well and warm, kicking it fly today because today is Friday, and what a great day to be alive. Put out a video a couple weeks ago now in regards to curing and how to cure your product. I received an incredible amount of questions in regards to burping, and I don't think in that video I really went over really burping, the process of doing such, and little tips and tricks on how to get the best results through burping. So we're almost at 100,000 subscribers. I believe we're going to do it this year, guys. If you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Help me get to the 100,000. We're going to party like it's 1969, baby, when we hit that 100K, and I cannot wait. Thank you guys so much. Also, if you didn't know, I stream every single night, 9 p.m. Central, over on twitch.tv/pigeons420. We do everything from gaming to garden tours to wake and bakes, you name it. It's over there every single night, twitch.tv/pigeons420. So come check it out. But what is burping? Well, to keep it pretty simple, essentially, after you harvest, you put your buds inside of a jar to try and cure and retain and kind of maximize the most cannabinoids as possible. But when you're doing so, the amount of moisture that comes out of those buds and remains in those jars, and the gases that come out of those buds and remain in those jars, can become hazardous to the long-term storage of those buds. So you need to burp your jars. And to burp your jars, you need to remove the lid to release all those excess moisture and gases. Essentially, within your jar, you want to maintain a humidity level of about 60%, anywhere in between 60-65%. You want to avoid high levels of moisture ranging to 70%. That's when you're going to risk mold. You get mold in your harvest and all that hard work is gone. And vice versa, if your buds in that jar get too dry, those terpenes are fried. That bud can become essentially bunk. I would recommend putting in like a hydrometer, something that's going to give you an indication of the moisture level inside the jar. Depending on when you harvested, you may have taken those buds a little bit too soon, you may have taken them a little bit too late, and you might need to keep a close eye on whether those moisture levels are going to be swinging too high or too low. Once a day, you're going to open up those jars and release those moistures and gases. Now, depending on how moist those buds are is going to determine how long you keep them outside of the jar. I tend to take the jar and kind of turn it in my hands. And if the buds fall and kind of separate individually, there's no need to empty the jar out. There's no reason to, manipulate it anymore. You can just leave the lid off, put it on the shelf and what have you. If you're turning those buds and they're stuck together, that's a good indication that you have an excess amount of moisture. Sometimes there's even a visual indication of moisture in the jar. You can see it coming down the side. If that's the case, you need to get the buds out of that jar. You need to get that jar dry, and you need to get those buds separated and leave them on the table for, it could be 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, until that bud is crispy to the touch on the outside, and you can kind of like give it a little squeeze, and you'll notice that there's a little bit of bounce, but yet it's crisp to the outside. That's when you put those buds back in the jar and put that lid back on. That's if there's an excessive amount of moisture. Now, if you tumble in the jar and you notice that they're kind of separated, they're kind of separating a little bit, but it's fine as long as there's no buds stuck together. If I'm twirling that jar and I see that a couple buds are stuck together and I can't get them separated, I'm going to get those buds out and I'm going to physically separate them to give it an opportunity to get air in between those two buds. That's when I'll put them back in the jar, leave the lid off. I like to keep the jar on its side so that there's the most amount of surface area on those buds, no kind of hidden areas for moisture and air to kind of sit and hide. Again, take a bud out, feel it. Could take 30 minutes, could take an hour, depending on the outside of that bud, whether it's crisp and bouncy to the touch. That's what you're looking for. Once that's done, you're gonna be burping those jars every single day for approximately the first couple weeks. It could be 2 weeks, it could be, 3 weeks, really until that hydrometer is settling closer to that 60 to 65%. Or those buds aren't sticking to each other. And when you go to touch them, they're crisp to the touch with a bit of bounce each time. So after about 2 to 3 weeks, that's when you can go down to probably burping them once a month. And again, it really depends on what's going on in that jar as to how you burp them. Is it going to be something that you just, twist in your hands, you see that all the buds are separating, open the lid, set it on the table, leave it. 30 minutes later, you come back, you feel the bud, it's perfect. Then you twist them up, it's the way to go. If you pull that bud out, if you go to touch it and it's still a little moist and soft to the touch, leave it out for a little bit longer. Your worst fear is accumulating mold. I rather take my harvest a little later than a little too soon. It's harder to play the burp game with flour that's too moist than it is to try to maintain or try to bring back some of that moisture from the bud. Too much moisture, it's bad. I've molded wheat. I think most people have at this point in your career. It's unfortunate, but the lessons learned are very valuable. I used to think that I would chop those buds off sooner and burp more often to try to prolong the cure. But more times than not, I would end up getting mold because I couldn't get back to the jars fast enough. So don't play that game. There's been plenty of times where I thought I've over-dried my harvest. I clipped those buds off. I got them into a jar. Sure enough, they were perfect. They were still sticking together the next time I opened up the jar. So you might think you've over-dried it, but that's not the case. Chances are you've still got some moisture retained in those buds that you're going to be able to use for long-term storage and curing. Get a good 7 to 12 to 15 day dry. Get those buds snipped off into the jars. Get yourself a good, reliable hydrometer. Remember that all hydrometers have a plus minus on them. So you have to stay vigilant. There's more than just using technology when you burp your buds, and that's one of the biggest tips I can give you. So don't become reliant on your tools. Be reliant on your visuals, your sense of touch. That's going to take you the longest way when you are burping your buds. If you have any questions, any comments, concerns, if you think I missed something, please don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. I read all of your comments. I can't respond back to all of them, but I read all of them, and I appreciate all the love and support and information and ideas that you guys are bringing to the comment section, and please continue to do so. This idea was brought to me by you guys. I realized that there was a lot of questions out there in regards to burping when I put out my curing video, and that's where I found a need for this one. So if there's something that you think I should touch on in a little more detail, please don't hesitate to ask. Until next time, don't forget, you can find us on twitch.tv/pigeons420 every single night. I will see you there. Have yourselves a fantastic 4th of July and Canada Day long weekend, and I will see you soon. God, your face is beautiful. Have a great one, guys. Peace.